Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be my most anticipated February 2024 releases. As always, this is by no means a comprehensive list of every single book that comes out in February. These are just a few of the releases that are on my radar and I think should be on yours as well. I will have all of the book information listed down below in the description bar, as well as I'll have the cover and the release date of the books on screen with me while I'm talking about them. But let's just go ahead and get started and talk about some of my most anticipated this month. This list kind of has a little bit of all of the genres that I've been interested in lately, everything from horror to romantasy. I know, I wouldn't consider myself, at least of last year, I wouldn't have considered myself a romantasy reader, but I've really been enjoying discovering more in that genre, so there's a little bit of everything on this list. But the first couple books are coming out February 6th, and the first book is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I've never read an Ali Hazelwood book before now, just because I don't really care for contemporary romance. It's not a genre that I enjoy, but I've heard wonderful things about her work. And this one kind of seems like a perfect February read. This is actually a paranormal romance, so this is, I believe, her first non-contemporary romance, and this is about a dangerous alliance between a vampire bride and an alpha werewolf, and it becomes a love deep enough to sink your teeth into in this new paranormal romance. It's also tagged as romantasy. I don't really know like the difference. I feel like this one is more going to be a paranormal romance rather than romantasy, because it feels like this is just very much romance forward. But I'm gonna be honest, I love vampire books, and it's February. It's February. Valentine's Day is going to be coming up. I think this could be a fun seasonal read for me. The next book I've already gotten the pleasure to read as an ARC. That would be Your Shadow Half Remains by Sunny Moraine, and this is a post-apocalyptic novella where if you look into the face of another person, you become crazy. You end up harming everyone around you, and then ultimately yourself. Our main character, Riley, is very secluded. She has been surviving, not exactly thriving in this new apocalypse, and she has not seen or talked to another person in quite a long time. However, when a mysterious stranger moves in across the street from her, Riley is captivated by Ellis, her new neighbor, and she starts to warm to Ellis. And as the two get to know each other, Riley starts having an overwhelming need for connection and an overwhelming urge to look into the eyes of her new companion. This is for fans of The Last of Us and Bird Box. Just go into it knowing that while the situation is kind of the same as those in terms of a pandemic, it's not like an action-packed adventure in an apocalypse. It's more of like an emotional internal novella about the difficulties of having to isolate in a pandemic or a post-apocalyptic world. And next up we have another romantasy. I know, who am I? But that would be The Absinthe Underground by Jamie Pacton, and this says that this is Moulin Rouge meets Holly Black in a thrilling sapphic friends to lovers romantasy. That's all I really need to know about it. I've been looking for more diverse romantasy. With any genre, I would like to diversify my reads in that department, so I think picking up a sapphic one sounds incredible. The cover for this one also is just absolutely gorgeous. Looks great, and the cover, like, it kind of has like that art deco inspired thing. It kind of just feels like an alternate like 1920s sort of fantasy inspired world. I don't know, I just know that I am excited to check this one out. The next couple of books are all coming out February 13th, and the first one is another one that I've been lucky enough to read an advanced copy of from NetGalley. That would be An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. I loved this one. If there's any book in this video that you check out, I think it should be this one. This has hands down been my favorite read that I've read so far this year, and I know while I'm filming this it's January, so that might not seem like a lot, but this was also one of my most anticipated of the year. This is a dark academia romance with some fantasy elements. It's sapphic. It's academic rivals to lovers. This is the same author that wrote A Diary in Blood, so if you love absolutely beautiful, lush, gothic sort of storytelling with vampires involved, you're going to want to check this one out. This is following two young women at St. Perpetua's College for Women. They are both in this very elite poetry seminar. They're both obsessed with their teacher, who has a lot of secrets of her own that she's keeping, as well as they become obsessed with each other, first as academic rivals, and then as they're continuously pitted against each other, it turns into something more than academic rivalry. Not only are Laura and Carmilla finding out more about each other as the novel goes on, but also about their mysterious teacher and secrets that St. Perpetua's College has been hiding. I absolutely loved this one. I really love this one. Dark academia fans are going to love this one. People who loved A Diary of Blood by this author are going to love this one. This is really wonderful storytelling, really wonderful gothic, very atmospheric storytelling. So definitely pick this up if it's not already on your radar. Next up, we have Among the Living by Tim Lebbon, and this is from the New York Times bestseller and author of Netflix's The Silence. It's a horror novel that's set in a melting Arctic landscape. Something deadly has lain dormant for thousands of years, but now the permafrost is giving up its secrets. First of all, that's something that every single time it's in a horror premise, I'm terrified. I really have anxiety about that happening because it is kind of happening in real life. So I guess let's get scared reading a horror science fiction about it before it becomes science fact. But this is about an expedition that goes into the Arctic, and they are drawn to a network of caves on a remote island up there. And it looks like there's actually two separate groups that come together during this one. One group are environmental activists that are determined to protect the land. The other group is exploiting rare earth minerals deep in the caves. This exploration releases a horrific contagion that has rested undisturbed for many millennia, fleeing the terrors emerging from the caves. These two rival groups undertake a perilous journey on foot across a very volatile landscape, and it looks like both groups are led by estranged friends, so they have to learn to work together, not only to get out of this situation, but stop this horror from spreading to the wider world as well. I don't know, I would have said actually before this year that I'm not a huge fan of survival horror. This is almost giving me The Thing vibes, just based on synopsis. I don't think the terror is going to be the same in The Thing as this, but it's just giving me a lot of those vibes. And I've been surprising myself lately by realizing that I do actually like a lot more survival horror. I've been picking up quite a bit of it this year actually, and I've been enjoying it mostly, so looking forward to checking this one out as well. Next up, we have a book with one of the most beautiful covers on this list, and that is Projections by S.E. Porter. S.E. Porter has written YA before. This is their adult fantasy debut. And it says it appeals to fans of Jeff Vandermeer, which honestly very intriguing and could mean quite possibly anything. But this is a fantasy, it's a gothic fantasy. It also has historical elements. It says love may last a lifetime, but in this dark historical fantasy, the bitterness of rejection endures for centuries. As a young woman seeks vengeance on the obsessed sorcerer who murdered her because he could not have her, her murderer sends projections of himself out into the world to seek out and seduce women who will return the love that she denied or suffer mortal consequences. This is a lush gothic journey across worlds full of strange characters and even stranger magic. So I'm intrigued. The cover again is absolutely gorgeous, and this looks like it's also like, you know, kind of a revenge story, which I tend to really like, especially in like this paranormal undead sort of format. I'm also very interested in the comparisons to Jeff Vandermeer because I haven't read a lot by that author, but what I have read I've really enjoyed, so I am looking forward to checking this book out as well. And I know I'm saying that for every book on this list, but I am genuinely so excited for every single book on this list. The last book on my list that comes out the 13th is The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Katherine Arden. This is another cover that is quite gorgeous, and Katherine Arden is a very popular author. I think this is kind of a newer sort of subgenre for her. This is a historical fantasy with paranormal elements. You might know her from The Bear and the Nightingale, her fantasy work, but this is during the Great War, and a combat nurse is searching for her brother, who is believed dead in the trenches despite eerie signs that point otherwise. So Great War, World War I. I really am fascinated by the spiritualist movements and just the emphasis on paranormal and ghost hunting and trying to contact ghosts, just the whole spiritualist movement that that started happening around the World Wars. That's very fascinating to me. I don't think I've actually read fiction about it, but I've read a lot of nonfiction about it. I've heard wonderful things about Katherine Arden and her writing style, and I think her writing style is going to lend itself very, very well to a story like this that looks like it's going to be a historical paranormal book that's going to pack a very emotional punch. I'm also going to go out on a limb and say that this one's probably going to be a book of the month pick. It looks like a book of the month pick. If you know, you know. Nothing bad about that. So I think I'll be picking this up for me and my mom buddy read one of their selections every single month. So it's been a while since I've read some historical fiction, and I'm looking forward to checking out this one with a paranormal twist. Okay, so what I'm noticing about this list so far, and we're moving on, these next couple of books all come out February 20th. What I'm noticing about a lot of these books is that they are authors that have previously written in other either age categories or genres and are branching out into new things, like Ali Hazelwood, Katherine Arden, and now this newest one, which is A Tempest of Tea by Hafsah Faisal. And this one, first of all, cover, I love it. But this is the first book in a fantasy duology about an orphan girl and her crew who get tangled in a heist with vampires. Perfect for Leigh Bardugo's Six of Crows fans. That's all I need to know about it. This one, you know, it's got those historical fiction elements, it's got those vampire fiction elements, and where would a February anticipated releases, TBR, kind of a romantic book releases be without vampires? They belong in February. They belong all year round. I love them. I'm very excited to check out this book. I think it has a lot of things that appeal to me. I like a good heist story. I've heard great things about this author's work, and this sounds like a really fun duology to, pun very much intended, sink my teeth into. Next up, we have a book with an absolutely gorgeous cover that is Son of Blood and Ruin by Lares. And this is a reimagining of Zorro, which immediately has me intrigued. But rumor has it on the streets of 16th century New Spain, there's a new vigilante in town serving justice. This reimagining of Zorro, featuring a heroic warrior sorceress, weaves Mesoamerican mythology and Mexican history 2 decades after the Spanish conquest into a swashbuckling historical debut. Fantasy with magic, intrigue, treachery, and romance. Sign me up for all of that. This is the first book in a series, I believe. All it says is Son of Blood and Ruin #1. That to me suggests it's at least a trilogy and not a duology, but cover's gorgeous. Reimagining of Zorro with magic. Sign me up. Next up is also another historical book, actually. Now I'm noticing also a lot of historical fiction on this list with other elements. That's Island Witch by Amanda Jayatissa. This is historical fiction. It's also gothic horror, which I'm so excited about. The blurb in this one says it recalls horror classics like Carrie and The Exorcist. That's all I need to know about it, because that's so exciting. Those are really, really bold comp titles, but just reading through this one, I think this one does have a potential to stand up there with other kind of like possession-y horror or supernatural horror greats. But this is a deliciously creepy and darkly feminist tale about the horrors of moral panic, the violent space between girlhood and adulthood, and what happens when female rage is finally unleashed. So this is inspired by Sri Lankan folklore, and it is in the 19th century Sri Lanka, where the daughter of a traditional demon priest, relentlessly bullied by peers and accused of witchcraft herself, tries to solve the mysterious attacks that have been terrorizing her coastal village. I love gothic horror. I love the themes explored in Carrie. I love The Exorcist as a book. Comparing this book to those is absolutely a surefire way for me to pick this up, and I'm very, very excited to check it out February 20th. And the last batch of books all come out February 27th. We're kicking it off with another romantasy. This is A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jenson, and this is Saga of the Unfated, book #1. I've heard a lot about Danielle Jenson. I've heard a lot about this author in the romantasy space. I feel like she was writing like fantasy romance before it was super duper popular. I still need to pick up books by her backlist, but this one, first of all, another absolutely gorgeous cover, but this is about a shield maiden who is blessed by the gods battles to unite a nation under a power-hungry king while also fighting her growing desire for his fiery son in this Norse-inspired fantasy romance from the best-selling author of the Bridge Kingdom series. I tend to not only really love books that deal with Norse mythology, but in particular fantasy books that are like not necessarily purely Norse mythology, but like Norse-inspired, Nordic-inspired worlds. So definitely gonna be checking out this one. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if I'm looking to get more into romantasy, especially in February, the month of love, then I think this author is one that just absolutely has to be on my want to read list. So looking forward to checking this out at the end of February. Next up, we have Lore of the Wilds. This is by Analeigh Sbrana, and this is a stunning, first of all, yeah, absolutely agree, because look at this cover. But it's a stunning romantasy debut about an enchanted library, 2 handsome fae, and 1 human who brings them all together. A library with a deadly enchantment, a fae lord who wants in, and a human woman willing to risk it all for a taste of power. I love books about books. And just again, this cover, I feel like I've said this about every single book in this video, but this cover is absolutely gorgeous. And again, I'm looking for more diverse romantasy because I feel like when people think romantasy, we're all thinking about the same couple of books that are written by white straight women. No shade to those authors because I do enjoy a lot of their work, but just, you know, getting some different perspectives, checking out different sorts of fae stories, and just Enchanted Library, handsome fae, sign me up. Next up, we have A Haunting in the Arctic by C.J. Cooke. That's very interesting. We've got 2 Arctic horrors on the list this month as well. But this is about a deserted shipwreck off the coast of Iceland that holds terrors and dark secrets. I'm fascinated. I love a good, I don't know what even subgenre to call this. It says it's gothic historical horror, but just like abandoned ships, like missing ships, like it's giving ghost ship vibes, but not as goofy as Ghost Ship, I'm sure. But the year is 1901 and Nikki is attacked, then wakes on board the Ormen, a whaling ship embarked on what could be its last voyage. With land still weeks away, it's just her, the freezing ocean, and the crew, and they're all owed something only she can give them. Now, over 100 years later, the wreck of the Ormen has washed up on the coast of Iceland. It's scheduled to be destroyed, but explorer Dominique feels an inexplicable pull to document its last days, even though those who have ventured upon the wreck before her have met uncanny ends. Haunted ship story? Haunted ship story, hopefully. I do love the horror premise about expedition crews or even singular people who go aboard a ship or even a spaceship, like a abandoned insular place, and they're exploring the wreckage and they're not alone in the wreckage. I'm intrigued to check this one out. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Kindling by Traci Chee. This is a standalone fantasy, which is exciting. I'm always looking for more standalone fantasy recommendations. But this is in a war-ravaged world where kindling warfare, the use of elite, magic-wielding teenage soldiers, has been outlawed. In this novel, 7 kindlings search for purpose and identity as they prepare for one final battle. This is for fans of the classic films Seven Samurai and the Magnificent Seven. So this kind of gives me, you know, like samurai or western vibe, like the whole concept of, I feel like, those kinds of stories in an epic fantasy setting. This sounds so interesting. And it's a gut-wrenching, introspective fantasy about 7 lost soldiers searching for the peace that they once fought for and the future in which they're finally daring to believe. This sounds great. The cover looks great. Just the themes that I feel like this fantasy book is going to be exploring, also great. And I always am looking for more standalone fantasies. I think the samurai aspects, the Magnificent Seven aspects, I think those are going to make for a really interesting standalone fantasy novel, and I'm very excited to check it out. So there you have it. Those are the books that I am really looking forward to checking out in February. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Definitely leave a comment down below letting me know what books you're interested in checking out this February, what books on this list appeal to you. Make sure to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel for all of the cozy gaming and bookish content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!